we only run till about 7:30, right?
Yeah, we get our time. What is going on? There you go. Oh, maybe.
You're still on. That on.
Is it working? It does not look like it's working.
You might have to kill the OBS and then bring it back.
Yeah, dang it. It figures I try and do something clever, and I
Do do do.
do.
Great one.
Why is it still? It starts and then it dies. There we go. Okay. You
Still on
Twitch is
YouTube, right?
back up. Yay! Now what about YouTube?
Hey, we're back.
Hey, oh, sorry
All
about that,
right,
guys. I was
we're
trying to
Mo.
be clever with OBS while we were talking, and apparently I don't. I shouldn't try and be clever during a live stream.
No, you try to do things fancy, and then it always goes awry.
Yep. So that was my bad, people. Sorry about that. Thanks for sticking around until we get back going again. Still waiting for YouTube.
Absolutely.
I'm still waiting for YouTube to decide it wants to receive.
Take about 45 seconds to a minute for it to figure its life out.
Yeah. So, anyways,
Yes. Where was I when we got cut off? Maybe Mojo will remember.
you were saying a game, but I wasn't listening because I realized the
Oh
stream
yeah.
died. Sorry.
So part of how that went logically was we were talking about the importance of lore in gaming. I'll just give this the quick synopsis because I could drone on for hours and hours and try to
Mojo
sound
says
all flowery and fancy.
Mojo says you just mentioned Homeworld.
Oh yes. All right. So Homeworld. I gave a big hint at Homeworld as one of the games that I really truly enjoyed. I love RTSs in general, and Homeworld, in my humble opinion, is one of the most innovative RTS games as a standard when it comes to say a space epic as far as RTSs are concerned. And I mentioned Homeworld not just because the story is phenomenal, and not just because Homeworld 2 was awesome and the Deserts of Carrick was amazing, even though it felt short.
I missed out on that one.
But
I didn't come into the franchise until Homeworld 2, and so I was used to a certain style of gameplay that made it hard for me to pick up one or continue into Deserts of Carrick.
yeah, well, honestly, when I played one, because I discovered one after I found two and played two. When I went back and played one simply because I wanted to get the full story of the game, and then shortly after I finished one is when I discovered that Deserts of Carrick came out, and that the story was incomplete. So when I played Deserts of Carrick, it really, as far as story goes and lore goes, and that it really brings in the solid picture of how the story of one and two came into being. Now, without getting, trying to avoid getting too sidetracked too much, the importance of mentioning Homeworld in this respect, aside from the fact that Homeworld 3 is going to drop in March.
Yeah, I haven't even
um,
done anything about that game. I'm pretty sure I'll be able to play it, but it's going to be interesting to see if I actually do, considering what's coming out in April.
Do tell.
Fallout London, baby.
Oh yeah.
But that might
I
be
do
towards
remember
the
you
end of
mentioning
April,
that.
so I don't know. We'll see. I've got a lot of games I'm trying to run via stream these days, and so my schedule, my lack of availability, interferes with my scheduling of multiple games. So I'm not sure.
Well,
Homeworld 3 I'm gonna probably
I've got
get
a.
and play on my own time, just to learn how, and then consider
Oh yeah.
streaming it over the summer or something. Because I love me a good
I
space
will
game.
be honest. I have a hell of a backlog right now.
And you're not even gaming right now, dude. Come on. I give you crap.
Now you're right. You're right.
Okay,
I'm
so
on a
anyways,
hiatus.
I'm gonna try not to interrupt again, but stream of consciousness, people, it happens. Go ahead with your point.
It happens. It happens. So I pointed out Homeworld as a great starting point for where I'm going. It's space genre. It's RTS genre. And my biggest example that I really love as far as games that have lore, have a backstory, but no story in the gameplay is a game called Sins of a Solar Empire. It is a space epic. You have it's built around multiplayer / sandbox. So you start the game up, there is no campaign. It plays basically an opening trailer that describes kind of it has a narrator that tells a story kind of sort of about, we're this far into the future, a branch of humanity just sails off into space to explore and then disappears. Everybody loses contact with them. And then everybody, like the planet, breaks off into a spacefaring civilization, more or less, and starts populating other star systems. And then all of a sudden, the narrator says everything was great until they came back, and it's as if a faction of humans evolved into these telepathic beings, and they're this collective that basically says you need to submit to the collective consciousness, blah blah blah. They're called the Advent. And then you see another faction break into the trailer, and they are basically a band of marauders. And that's effectively all the story you get is what is in this trailer. And then you actually jump into the main menu, and you can start a game against a computer. You can pick a number of opposing factions. You can tell what faction they are, or you could tell them to pick random. You can pick one of three factions, and you can build out the size of the map. It could be a randomly generated map with this many stars and this many planets per map, yada, yada, yada. Boom. Massive galaxy level real-time strategy game. It is, I feel like it is one of the absolute best RTS games that I have played in a long time, and haven't really found a lot that can compete with it that works in that genre, because like different games for different reasons. I can't sit down and compare, say, StarCraft to Sins of a Solar Empire. Just like it'd be the exact same thing, in my opinion, as comparing StarCraft to Homeworld. Homeworld's pretty expansive. Its RTS building is completely on a different level of what StarCraft is, and completely on a different level of what Sins of the Solar Empire is. You don't exactly have base building in Homeworld. You have a single mothership and then all your unit production. You don't have base building. You don't have to defend planets. You don't have to defend colonies or asteroid mining operations. It's, well, you do have to defend asteroid mining operations, but you get my point.
Yeah.
And while at first I was disappointed that Sins of a Solar Empire didn't have a story, that at least in that consideration, but at the same time, after I got into playing the game and really enjoying it, it was one of those games that, much like Civilization, I could just sit down and get lost in it. And yeah,
Sins
there
of
you go.
Solar
I
Empire
present to
Rebellion,
you.
199 CDN on Steam. So that means it's probably
Yeah.
99 cents for us.
You've got the base game, and I think it has it might actually have three expansions now. The last expansion that I remember expanded it. Basically, all the expansions were just additional units. But the most the most recent expansion that I remember, I never got to play it because I lost track of time playing games and stuff at the time. But it had a unit build out list where you could build space stations in the orbit of different planets, and the space stations would have different purposes. It'd be like a trade market, a military outpost, and then something else. I think probably like a media broadcast center of some sort. The military outpost basically would occupy all of your defensive, all of your building units when you put it down there, but would wreck any enemy ships that would come into your orbit. You had so you had your base faction called the TEC, and it was basically like your standard units. Their each faction had their own capital ships, their own types of ship classes, and their different economy quirks. And the research trees where you have your civilian, your military, and I think it was your military tree, your shipbuilding tree, and your civilian tree, and how your economy would work. The TEC's economy is like the base economy, and it goes up with the more planets you occupy, and you generate credits that way. And then you had the Advent, which is kind of like the little telekinetic faction where they would have their their economy was more based off of their influence in a system. Basically, their ships, whenever their ships would come into a system, they uh they would gain their economy would gain strength and would produce more income with the more planets that they had their ships in the orbit of. So what their trend would be to come into orbit of your system and attack your ships and just sit there, maybe bombard your planet a little bit, and then warp out. And they would
This sounds sort of like. Certain elements of this sound somewhat like Star Trek Birth of the Federation. Did you ever play that game?
um no, but I did play what was it, Star Trek Command or something like that. Basically, it's basically a battler where you pick different ships out of Starfleet or different ships out of the Klingon and
Yeah, and just sort
the
of pit them
Vulcan
against
and
each other. Birth of the
Romulan and
Federation. Birth of the Federation is one where you is another game. Sounds somewhat like Sins of the Solar Empire, but basically you had a lot of you had 5 different empires from Star Trek. You had Federation, Klingon Empire, Cardassian Union, Ferengi Alliance, and Romulan Star Empire. And you choose your faction, and you start off with your home world. You expand outward, colonizing the planets of your home world, finding other star systems, colonizing them, building up resources to build up ships to either do what you said with send ships to bombard a planet into submission and then taking it over, or
yep.
and then there's diplomacy and there's commerce and there's things like this. So there's a few different ways where
Yeah.
you could give your opponent grief, either just straight up attack, or you could do like sabotage or espionage. You could do diplomacy, things like that. I always felt that particular game was kind of broken in a couple of ways. Like once you, like, say the Cardassian Union, say you're the Federation and your opponent is the Cardassian Union, they will sue for peace, and by sue for peace I mean you pay them, and they'll sign a peace treaty. Problem is that once you've done that, you have to keep paying them, and the amount that you have to pay just grows and grows and grows until the point where you're like, going, I can't afford to keep you as friends anymore, so go away. And then they immediately declare war, and then you go in and you have to go and send your ships in and beat them back into submission. But there's another game.
Yeah.
There's another game that feels like it's like the spirit of Birth of the Federation. Have you heard of Stellaris?
It sounds familiar.
Yes, and to your point, Mojo, that is the definition of the Cardassians. Ferengi too, but Cardassians would do it more. But anyways, the Stellaris there's a version of Stellaris that is Star Trek. Like they took the open source basic like mechanics of Stellaris and applied Star Trek to it. And you don't get all 5 of the factions that you got from the Birth of the Federation game, but you get 4 of them, and it looks an awful lot like Birth of the Federation. And someday I'm probably gonna get it and try it out just to see how similar it is. But I keep reading the reviews, and some people are for it being Star Trek, some of them are against it being Star Trek, and just calling it an add-on for like a reskin of Stellaris. And it looks like it's a reskin of Stellaris. It could be that they did some of the same ideas, but it's not based on Stellaris. I can't tell. Anyways, it's Birth of the Federation did not have. It had all the lore from Star Trek. It brought in a lot of like the minor races. You didn't have any of the original characters from Star Trek, but you had the backstory of what the Federation were, what the Ferengi were, what the Cardassians were, what the Klingons were, and then it's basically build up your empire, become the dominant, or the only if you go conquer mode, and so victory is having peace with all the opponent factions, or conquering all the opponent factions, but there was no actual story to the actual gameplay.
So where I think this concept, not necessarily concept, comes from, but where I think a lot of these games come from that have they have an overarching backstory, but you don't get your story from the gameplay like we've been saying. I think a lot of that comes from games that are like Civilization, games that are that were designed I'm gonna go way back, Age of Empires, Rise of Nations. Um, you're kind of getting my point, I think, though. A lot of these games, they didn't have specific stories to them. Early on, some of them did, but games like Civilization, they give you a backstory and then they say, "All right, go, do battle, or bring about peace." So I think that's where a lot of these games come from. But I'd say uh, I'd say go ahead, Mariner, and what one was a game aside from obviously Birth of the Federation, but what games really struck a chord with you that didn't really have a story in the gameplay, but did have a backstory?
That's going to be a bit of a think because usually I'm all about games with story. Like, if a game doesn't have a story, I'm bored very, very quickly. Like Minecraft. Minecraft didn't have any story. Like, it wasn't until a few years ago when they put out, like, story mode that made that it could have kept my interest. If I had stayed away from Minecraft long enough for that to come out, I might have played more of it, but
Well,
Mojo's got
that's something that I can get into.
Mojo's talking about in the chat about a lot of tower defense games have a backstory, but not during actual gameplay. League of Legends is something along those lines, isn't it, Mojo?
Well,
They got
League
some
of
really
Legends
fun.
is outside of my purview.
Yeah, I don't know much about. I've tried League of Legends once, and I was far more interested in the backstory of the individual characters than I was in the actual gameplay because there was nothing there that interested me story-wise. But did you see the series Arcane on Netflix?
I never saw the series Arcane, but I've heard of the game Arcane.
League of Legends has their like tower defense or like DOTA sort of style of combat, but all
Dota.
Dota, all the characters in that game have phenomenal backstories, or the characters are just so deep. It's awesome, and they put together some of the best ones, some of the more popular ones I feel, from the game, and gave them their own television series, and that goes into like how characters became the way they are that you see in the game. It's not a like prequel to the game, more of a filler, because League of Legends had a bunch of YouTube videos that told the story behind the scenes of, like, I guess the best way to say it is, you know how Diablo 4 has seasons? Well, League of Legends also had, I want to call them seasons for lack of a better term, but they had like YouTube videos that kind of did the story behind the scenes for the various characters you see in that season being highlighted for whatever reason. And there was some really good videos that were based on nothing but, like, what is it? League of Legends has these tournaments, and they would come out with they would come out with cinematic music video games or animated music video vids that they'd put out, and some of the most phenomenal ones I've ever seen are done. League of Legends did for these tournaments, and made me really want to know more about the characters. The gameplay is boring for me because there's no story, but as far as like the characters are so rich and so awesome that I'm like, when Arcane came out, I'm like, yes, give me this, give me more of this, let me eat this, let me rewatch it, let me get all the facts, all the lines, all the awesomeness out of this I possibly can, and then sit on my hands for however many years before they come out with season 2. But Mojo in the chat says Overwatch had good character backstories but no actual story. Gazoo, of course, he's going to go here. Oh, I got one. Online chess.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's
The two things you can always count on with Gazoo: alcohol and chess. He's going to work one of them into the
alcohol and
conversation
chess.
somewhere. Yeah. He plays drunk chess.
I would say that's a little. I'd say that he would probably still kick my ass too. Apologies, I forgot. My bad.
It's okay.
He would still kick my butt.
Yeah. But as far as like
but
my own experience with games that have awesome backstory but no, or awesome game lore but no actual lore in the game, I'm drawing blanks. Because, like I said, for me, a game has to have story. Otherwise, I don't bother.
That's fair. That's fair.
Unless it's like what I'm on. Unless it's what's on the screen right now, which is Train Sim, which is a good like. I found this game a while back, and I've been saving it for. I tried streaming it really early on when I was streaming, because I wanted to have like a game in the background and engage with my audience, but the audience never appeared, so I shelved it. Now I've got a bit of an audience and someone to talk to on the stream, so it's a good backdrop. But there are very few.
Yeah, that works out.
Yeah. Let me look in my Steam library while you continue on. Maybe I'll find another title that I play that is not.
Well, I will give you some thoughts to chew on a little bit then. This particular dynamic applies to a lot of, I don't want to call them retro games, I'll call them a lot of classic games. Go back far enough into the history of gaming, and I'm talking during the era of like the NES, the original Sega. You had a lot of games where there was a story. It didn't really get told in the gameplay, but it would get, in this case, it was told through the video game inserts, the pamphlets, the instruction booklets.
Yeah, we were talking about Warcraft last week.
Well, Warcraft, maybe early on it was like that, but Warcraft, no. In fact, Warcraft and Warcraft 2, their story was told in the mission briefs.
Right, but
So
I
it was
thought
part of the
Warcraft.
gameplay.
No, it wasn't until Warcraft 3 that I think they had the insert.
No.
But that was story based.
You're talking.
I'm just
I'll be a little two ways about that, but yeah.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about like the ancient.
Well, go with your example, because I guess I didn't know where you were going.
No, I was saying like the older retro games, and I'm talking like the era of like Super Mario Brothers or Sonic the Hedgehog. You didn't get a story in the gameplay per se. Like, you could tell a little bit of a story, but more your story came from the insert and media outside of the video game, because that was mostly because the story that they wanted to tell was a little bit too complex for video games to really tell that story. I mean, those games also were notorious for not giving you clear hints on where to go to complete puzzles.
I've thought of a game or a game franchise that I used to play that had no story, or it had like very minimal story. It had lore only in that there was what am I trying to say? Like, as a franchise, there were certain games of the franchise that had backstory, but not a lot. And I'm talking about Need for Speed. So from underground through Carbon, there was a story. Like,
Okay.
Underground was like street racing, but there wasn't really a lot of like story progression. It was like, do this race, great, now do this race, great, now do this race, here's your opponent, go beat him, that sort of thing. But and then from Underground you went into Underground 2, which was a sequel, but like a cheap knockoff sequel, where it was like, you've got this story, you are this character from the first game, but the second game doesn't really relate. And then yeah, certain games did have stories inside themselves. Like the first Most Wanted had a great story. Most of it was inferred because it was, you've got this cutscene here, you got this cutscene here, you got this cutscene here, but there's like 20 races in between them, if you did it right. And then there was Heat, there was Undercover rather, Payback. I think the latest one was actually Need for Speed Heat, but I didn't get into that one so much because I was given too many choices. But like Undercover 2 went into very mildly went into linked up with Undercover, because there's one race where you get the guy, he was earlier than Undercover. Oh, I don't remember which title you're referring to then. Undercover. I might. Anyways, but like the first Most Wanted game had its own story, but it also linked up barely with the previous iterations, because you're driving on the street and you run into this other driver who goes, "Let's see how you drive in the daylight," because Underground and Underground 2 were all fully night street racing. Most Wanted put you in the daylight for the first time, and then Most Wanted put you into Carbon. You had the villain from Most Wanted appearing a couple of times, but it was a lot of story inference versus actual storytelling, because it's a racing game. But yes, there are versions. My favorite Need for Speed games are the ones that do have a story, like Heat, Undercover. Carbon was probably the worst one of the lot, before they started remaking the titles. Like the best example of a title they should have either just remastered or not bothered with was Most Wanted, the second version, where it was nothing but racing. There was no story in it whatsoever. Irritated the heck out of me. It was like it was like in the introduction to each race or each pursuit was like a college art film practically, because they were doing all sorts of weird things with colors. There was one that sticks out in my memory where they just pile cop cars into a pyramid that arrives to chase you. It was dumb and weird, and the racing was okay, the cars were okay. It was more of a treasure hunter type thing where you had to go find the different cars to be able to drive them, and then each car had its own set of races to run. So, I mean, if you want pure racing with cool cars, it's great. If you want a story, go find something else. Or go back to the first one.
Well, if I want a story, I was going to say, if I want a story, I tend to avoid racing games.
I like racing games, and I like story, and it's really nice when they put the two together. But the storied racing games that I've seen aren't that great anymore.
Well,
so that got us off track a little bit, but I was finally found an answer to your question.
It fits.
Yeah.
I really think it fits, honestly.
Yeah.
You touched a little bit on games that kind of have the story but kind of did not.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I want to point at games that are great examples of this, you see probably one of the first examples that we could really get at would be Super Mario Brothers. is there a story beyond the princess is in another castle? And the answer is, why, yes, there is. However, the story isn't told in the game. You know
You'll
what I
have
mean?
to go in. Yeah, you'll have to go into that one because I didn't know there was any story at all, other than
Tell you the truth,
my,
that
all. What's his face is kidnapped the princess and we need to go find her, sort of thing.
yeah, well, yeah, I'm really standing a chance to getting fact checked on this one, but your story is more of the world building that comes in the instruction booklet, where the instruction booklet tells you about all the different characters, what they, you know, the profiles on the different characters, the different monsters, the princess's kingdom, and all this stuff. There's a bunch of stuff there, and the world was built pretty expansively for a game that was just a side scroller about breaking bricks with your head and jumping on turtles.
Doing, doing, doing. That's the closest I can get to making that sound.
And you're not wrong.
Yeah.
um we kind of touched on fighting games last week too.
Yeah, we were talking about
And
Tekken and Street Fighter.
Tekken, Street Fighter, and Mortal Kombat.
Ah, yes.
And a lot of people tell me that there was a story in the earliest games. And yeah, I believe them. But at the same time, I feel like a lot of those stories in the earliest games were very much on the inferred side of things, and there wasn't really a cohesive story to those fighting games until later on, where they were kind of, if you will, retrofitted in because of the story that they were telling with the newer games.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mojo says, but wasn't there a story about how the Plumber brothers got sucked into the Mushroom Kingdom? I'm old and can't remember. Wasn't that the topic of the Super Mario Brothers film from last summer?
That was,
Or was
pretty
that
much
the
the story.
80s Mario? Or was that the 80s Mario's? Or blah, 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 blah. There's a Mario movie in
don't
the 80s, but I guess we don't talk about that one.
We don't really talk about that one. No, bullshit. Sorry, that's two. No, we talk about that one because that's a cult classic. It's
Okay.
so bad it's good.
I gotcha. Mojo says there's a whole
At
TV
least I
series from
think
the
that way about
80s.
it. But in truth, there is, yeah, they did tell the story in the movie that came out last summer. It's,
But Mojo's saying
I'm
she
just gonna
swears
come
the
right out and
insert
say
had
it.
a little story about it though. And I'm like, oh, this one's Hero's territory if he remembers it all, or if he's aware of this.
Dude, I don't remember that. Mojo, I too am old and can't remember. But yeah, I don't remember if that was a story that was told in the pamphlet. I would not be surprised because that does fit the modus operandi, if you will. That just fits the way things were back in the day. Careful, Phoenix. Freaking almost slipped and fell off of her piano chair. But yeah, the storytelling within those instruction booklets was honestly really good. And I remember a game where I had no idea what the heck I was doing, but it was called Star Tropics, and I just remember reading that instruction booklet back to back several times just because I really enjoyed what they built with that world. And it's literally a story about a kid with psychic powers that takes his baseball bat to save the world.
Ah, yes, the old baseball bat saving the world. Whatchamacallit? Trope. There it is.
Yeah, the trope. I mean, we have Earthbound that does that. Star Tropic did that. And back in the late 80s, early 90s, Mighty Max.
What was the anime series that took that and sort of put it on its head? Or turned
Dude,
it
I
on
don't
its
even
head?
remember.
There was an anime series from the 80s or 90s. I think it was the 90s. Oh man, I can't remember what it was called. I can see flashes of images from the series in my head, but I can't think of the name. But it basically was one of those weirder anime stories where there's a mysterious kid out there clumping bad guys on the head, and the show was trying to figure out who this kid was. Maybe it was more of a
It wasn't a
serial killer.
90s anime. That wasn't a 90s anime.
You know which one I'm talking
That
about?
was. I do. I remember it. It was. I want to say mid 2000s, honestly.
You might be right on that.
Trying to remember. They. Man, I'm really digging deep. They called him either the crazy slugger or the like the psycho slugger or something like that is what they called him. And yeah. But yeah, they wanted to find the kid, and they couldn't figure out if he was a criminal or if he was just a vigilante. I remember that. And he was basically. It was very confusing as to whether he was a bad guy, because he was obviously a police officer, but he was going around on skates and beating the crap out of people that did morally wrong things.
Yeah. I'll have to look it up after the stream. Oh.
Yeah.
With a pencil, baseball bat,
Yeah.
knock the shit out of people.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah. There's my wife. She remembers it now too.
By the way,
nobody can remember.
give her my message, by the way.
It was a kid.
Oh, yeah.
This kid was a personification of somebody's.
Yeah.
You need to hold up the mic to her.
Mariner,
She knows more about
Mariner
this than we do.
says,
You need to hold,
"Hey, lady."
but you need to hold up the
don't know
microphone
if
to
you
her.
can hear
She's
that.
remembering more about it than we are.
Right. Well, it's kind of hard to hold up the microphone to her. It's an earbud.
Oh yeah.
But
I don't know.
yeah,
Anyways,
bent up baseball bat, and yeah, we went way off the rails.
we got 10 minutes left. Can we recover?
Honestly, I feel like we might have covered a lot of ground with this particular topic. Maybe we should start brainstorming about a topic for next week.
Yeah. Do we continue with the lore in gaming, or do we try to find something else?
Family. Friend. But yeah, you got chores to do.
I got 10 minutes.
Uh-oh. She's calling you out.
Yep.
Oh, actually, Gazoo has an interesting one. He said, explain Gamergate, LOL.
Oh my god. Well, the way I see Gamergate is a complete different narrative from what you would read in the media.
Okay. I don't know
I
if
could
that's...
give a quick 5-minute version.
let's
I could give a quick 5-minute version.
let's not. Well, maybe we'll bring that up later. So I want to think of something. Like you said, let's think of something to talk about for next, or something for next week. We could talk about space games since we started on Homeworld a little bit earlier.
Yeah, why not? I was about to lean into favorite genres, because I don't remember if we really decided what our favorite genres were.
I don't have a set favorite genre. I have games that are in genres that I like, but I'm not huge into, like, if it's in this genre, I will automatically play it sort of person.
Well, because we're very different in our part. Well, I don't even know if I would say that much. We are very much different in our tastes in general. I do have a favorite genre, but I wouldn't have a lot to really talk about unless I start going into what games are in those genres that I love and adore.
Yeah. So we could start a cycle of like talking about different genres, and then, like, I don't know. It's either like I said, the space game genre or another favorite genre that we can then find games about to talk about.
Well, let's make it easy. So let's talk about space genre games next week, and then if we brainstorm enough to talk about, say, favorite games in favorite genres, kind of go genre by genre and see what we like in it and what we don't like in it, then we can go from there.
So that leads to the next question. Are space games technically a genre, or are there games that are space games but in different genres? Or do we want to save that conversation for next week? Like, I can write it down. Is space game a genre?
You know what? Let's. I don't know if this is how you wanna. I don't know if you want to do it this way, but how about we ask the question, what is a genre? How about we talk about that?
Space games are 4x games. I don't know what he means by that, but yeah. What is a game? What is a genre?
Yeah.
Or the game genre, rather? Okay.
Yeah, what is a genre? In reference to video games, of course. Because you brought up a good question that just the gears in my brain started turning.
Okay, cool. I got it written down for next time. We still have 5 minutes. What do we do now?
And then what happened?
Yeah. So I guess I'll go. I guess I could go into Starfield a little bit. I have uninstalled the game from my computer, and I'm setting it aside for a while I wait for the DLC to come out and or mod support, or both.
I have heard much that makes my heart cry for you, sir. as far as Starfield goes. Now, on this particular topic, we've discussed at length on Lagging Out. By the way, Lagging Out Fridays, 7 Central.
Do the plug. Can't forget
Fridays, 7 Central. We talk about all kinds of things, video games and entertainment in general, and we're all around fools on stream. So, but yes, on Lagging Out, we had a discussion about Starfield, and you were there. And originally, you said that you really loved the game, and then after you beat the game and let it settle in your mind, digest it some, you kind of seem to change your tune slightly to from I love this game to it's not bad. It's not
Yeah,
bad, but it's
it's
not fast.
yeah. See, the problem was it was that honeymoon period at the beginning, seeing what Starfield was all about, learning how to play, seeing what you could do with the game, what skills were there, all the mechanics, everything like that. I was so enamored with all of that that I forgot to pay attention to the fact that there was no overarching story. There were no interconnectivities
There wasn't
between any of the
much.
factions. There was each
Mm.
individual faction had their own thing, and they did not connect to any of the other factions and their things. Unlike Fallout 4, where all the factions were connected in that they all had differing interests with, like, the Brotherhood of Steel came to defeat the Institute because of the synths. The Railroad wanted to save the synths but destroy the Institute. The Institute wanted to destroy the Brotherhood, destroy the Railroad, and carry on with their business. The Minutemen were just like, we want people to be able to survive, and the Institute is a threat to that survival. So, like, they were all connected. Oh no, Mojo broke her Twitch. I don't know how. She'll have to get into that later. But none of that existed in Starfield, and it wasn't until the third or fourth time that I was playing through it that I realized that. I was dismissing most of the complaints about the fact that the galaxy was pretty empty. I was dismissive of the fact that there wasn't necessarily a lot to do. There's a lot of roaming around the galaxy, I was doing an exploration build where I wanted to see what all was out there. I wanted to visit all the star systems, visit all the planets, or at least find out what was in the galaxy. Once I did that, I was able to see the trees from the forest and how none of them were really connected in any way. Once I made that realization, I definitely got disenchanted with Starfield. And seeing
I wish I had that clip. I wish I had that clip of Az.
boring. Yeah. After
He's a guy that I wouldn't mind meeting.
Yeah, same here. But it was definitely, once I got over the original awe and wonder of the game and started to see the holes in the, there's a video I've got on my YouTube I have a one marked watch later that I'm going to go to probably soon and watch it and talk about how that was talking about how, I forget the title. Let me see if I can find it really quick. YouTube. Watch later. Starfield universe makes no sense. Excerpt from Starfield's writing is pure cringe. I don't know where that is. It looks like that's another channel or some other episode or whatever. But yeah, so it's like they forgot, and I've talked to Mojo about this. It's like Todd Howard called it in. Actually, you and I were talking about this a few weeks ago while I was playing Monster Hunter. Todd Howard called it in. The writers called it in. No one remembered why people liked Fallout 4 to this day, despite all the bugs.
Yeah.
It's like
that actually.
They were so focused on the experience they forgot to write the game. Like the common statement is they were so focused on getting 1,000 planets for people to explore that they forgot to put anything in them. So,
well, being that we are in the field that we are in, you in a slightly different form of the same field that I'm in, when you build something that expansive, you got to understand and realize, which I know you do, but people have to understand and realize that when you have a program that has expansive locations, the density of what goes in them is going to be less or reduced. It requires a severely complex set of skills in order to populate those planets, if you will.
Yeah. So
Make sense?
yeah, and it could be that this will be solved in a year when they start putting out DLCs and they start putting out things to fill the spaces. But right now, like, I don't know if it's fair to compare this to Cyberpunk 2077 because that took a year to actually become a good game. I don't think that
Yeah.
this game is actually going to ever get that point based on what I'm seeing right now. Like Cyberpunk didn't. I don't know what it was with Cyberpunk that made it take a year to get good, but it doesn't feel like it's the same scenario for Starfield. See,
Well,
Gazoo says at this moment, 15K
probably
players
is.
on Fallout 4 Steam, 6.5K players on Starfield Steam. That should say it right there.
Yeah.
The fact that there's so low numbers on either game is a little worrisome, but I mean, but if you think about Fallout 4 is almost 10 years old, Steam is almost not 10 months, but like 6 months old at this point because it came out in September. So almost 6 months old.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, we've blown our time that we were going for, and I have so many things that I could say along that vein to explain the differences there between Cyberpunk and Starfield.
yeah, we'll save it
But
for another day.
I don't know if you want me to get into that.
Yeah, we'll save it for another day. I'm trying to get to the finish line on this train job, but I can do that off stream. I'm almost there. I'm like 150 feet away. But then I stopped the engine and can't get it going again. But I'll fix it. So anyways, thank you everyone for hanging out with us, both on Twitch and on YouTube. If you're watching on the if you're rewatching on YouTube, please hit the like. If you like our conversations, hit the subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified of our next stream. Hiro, thank you as always for hanging out.
It's always been a pleasure.
Yes, and we'll see you Friday night on your live. I will be back tomorrow night for
That's right.
Mass Effect 2 with Mojo. Until then, enjoy the games you play, fair winds, and you know the rest. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.